Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you some work I've been doing on a little bit of artwork. So I'm going to show you a time lapse that I recorded earlier. I hope this isn't too fast. So I was just fiddling with a few things. I noticed one of the houses there was missing the windowsills, so I've put those in. Now, one of the things that I've been really struggling with this is the temptation to just do loads of stuff. So what I'm doing now is I'm changing the color of the doors and the windows, because what I noticed was that in the game where the player was in front of them, in some cases, like where the doors were very dark, you couldn't really see the cannon. And then what I tried to do is lighten the windows, and then they were too light, and then you couldn't really see the player, the wizard. So I've just been sort of fiddling with those colors to get it to look right. And then I've been going through and just like changing them on all of the different building textures there. So there's quite a few changes that I'd kind of like to make to this artwork, but it's one of those things where it's just not necessary. I have to keep reminding myself it's just a practice project. I want to have it look decent, but it doesn't have to look perfect. Right, hold on a moment. Right, so back in game, there's a couple of things that I've changed here. First of all, you'll notice that these two houses are bigger than those two. So I'm experimenting with the scaling. And also, a little subtle thing I've done is I've moved the player down. So she was sitting just on top of the base of the street, which is where the houses were. But it's really bugging me that was still so much bigger than the door. I mentioned that in an earlier video. So I'm experimenting with scaling up the size of the houses even more, but then moving her down. And I think that looks a little bit better because it kind of gives the impression that she's further forward, and so you'd expect the door to be a bit smaller. So I think that works better. So also I prefer this size of windows, because if you kind of look at that the orb, I think if they were really small like this size, I mean, yeah, you could hit them, but I just think it'll just be a little bit easier, which is a bit bigger. But that also means that the bigger houses, if I just find those. So these are using, which ones was I using there? Those two, which I think is house 2 and house 5. But I've got some big ones in there, like house 8. So if I change out one of those buildings for house 8, this is, oh, I haven't scaled it up, but that's going to then go off the top of the screen. So I think what I might do is increase the screen size. So currently the screen size is determined by the actual size of the scene. This is what I did in Pong as well. I kept changing the screen size because I didn't like the size of the actual play area. And I've got the same thing here. So I've created a rectangle of a play area which is just set to the window width and height, and the window width and height I set by the size of the background. And so all I need to do is change this image size, so I can just scale that up in my art editor the same way that I've been doing with the individual house textures, and then that will automatically change the size of the game. And so I think that's something that I might do. So, oh God, what am I clicking on? So I think one of the things that I also mentioned was that I didn't want to use the houses with the bits at the bottom, but in actual fact, I've changed my mind on that. So houses 1 and 3. So if I just change these out, so if I put house 1 in there, and then house 3 over here. Actually, let's swap those around. Let's put 3 in there and then 2A here. I really love this JSON thing, using this to define the buildings, because it just makes it so that I can just change the level around as much as I want. I've also added in just a small gap of just a few pixels inside in between the buildings. It looked a little bit weird when it was squished together. So what I thought was that by having the different coloured glass in those windows, it kind of shows that they're different. So now they're just kind of background. So what I was thinking was that I might have this where I've got a few different levels to the game. So on the first level, you've got these easier buildings. Of course, these two are not scaled up yet. This is the smaller size. And then on the next levels, I can have buildings which have got more windows in it. So like house 6 is a bit bigger, house 4 is a bit bigger. And then I could have maybe 3 levels. So then on the third level, you could be dealing with like houses 7, 8, 9, for example, because they're much bigger. So yeah, so I think I'm going to do it that way. So I've got three different levels, and they get kind of progressively harder because you've got more things to do. Now, the next thing I'm going to be doing is working on the actual content of the window. So individually, so inside here, what I want is I want the people, like the faces, to appear in there, but I also want the window to kind of light up with a background color to kind of help guide the player know what kind of mood is in there, so they know what orb to fire. So what I've done there is I've literally just created a blank texture, which is just white, because that's then going to allow me to set the if I just close the game, when you draw a sprite, which I don't actually have in here because it's in my Calamo project, but you draw it with a color in MonoGame, and if you apply anything other than white, it applies a tint. So that's going to allow me to simply color the windows programmatically without having to deal with multiple textures. So that is the thing that I'm going to be working on next, is working out where, making sure I've got a way of defining, or I have got a way of defining, it's like where the windows go, but now I need to draw them so that I can make sure they're all in the right places. And again, by using this white texture, by drawing that over the top, I'll be able to see visually if I've got them in the right place, and then I can deal with the actual faces. So that's going to be my next part, is dealing with the windows. Okay, so I've scaled things up, and I've tried 2 different sizes, and I think I've got a new problem. So I scaled it up one time, and it fit houses sort of 8 and 9. So if I show that in there, if I close that down, yeah, so if I put, so instead of, I've already got them in there, 8 and 9 are already there, sorry. Now house 10 is this really tall skinny one here, and this was the problem. All of the others fit into there, but the problem now is that the game is just so much bigger. There's also a bug here because there's no gap between that. But I've got 2 problems. One is that now if I wanted to do the smaller houses, so like level 1, which was like house 2, I think it was like house 3, I just put like 4, 5 in. I just play that now, it only takes up a small amount of the screen. And so you'll just need to have a lot more of them. And I think now this is too big. But then there's another problem as well. If I put in that house 10 again and show the height of it, the problem we've got now is that even on full charge, this cannon is nowhere near powerful. Oh, or just about, actually, just about. On full charge, it can just about get there. But that's going... No. So certainly if I put it in that position, just about. that's tricky. That's kind of hard to hit. I would need something shorter. This building here, I've just called this the blank house. That's just so that if I've just got something I want on the edge, but I don't particularly want that playable. So I think this is too big now. So I'm just going to go back to the previous one. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop building 10. I'm not going to use this one. I've got 9 houses. I think that'll be enough to do 3 levels. All right. So this is the middle of the road size that I've settled with. This house still hasn't changed, so I must have missed one when I was resizing. So this is now 1200 pixels wide, and this building here is house 8. This is now the tallest, and it's just a little gap there. So I think this will work well. So I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to stop fiddling with this now, because this is now, it's the kind of thing where it's starting to kind of waste my time. I need to get on with actually building the game now instead of fiddling around with all the artwork. Okay, so I'll just fix that house, and then I'm going to create the first level that I want to start with. Now at the moment I haven't got the mechanism to change levels within the game, so that's something I'll have to add in later, and I also need to figure out why there is no gap between that building. Okay, so now we have some code to actually do something with the windows. So I brought in a list of windows. So this is read in directly from the JSON file here, and this gets dumped into this class. I did have a little bug. First of all, everything was 0, 0, and I realized the JSON is actually case sensitive, so the X and Y needed to be in capitals. So that was an easy fix. So all I've done here is I'm just going through the list of the window positions, and then I'm creating that into an actual vector. So the positions of the window is simply offset from the position of the building. So I don't have to define this more than once for each building, but in actual fact I've got some duplication there. And then what I've done in order to test it, I've just asked for a random color, and that gets passed into it. So if I show you what this looks like in the game, it makes it look very colorful. So obviously it's not going to look like that in the real game. And if I do that again, I should get different colors each time I run it. But the colors and everything, this is purely for me as a kind of a developer tool to make sure that I've got this right. So all I had to do was just position those textures in the right place. Now I have actually got some duplication, so hang on, let me just show you again. So what I've decided to do in terms of the buildings and the levels is I've picked these 3 buildings. So this is going to be my level 1. I'm going to stick with that now. So this is building 1, 2, and 3. I've actually renamed the buildings so that they're more logical for me. And then 4, 5, and 6 are going to be used for level 2, and 7, 8, 9 for level 3. So what that means is this building here, I keep pointing to it on my screen, of course you can't see that. This building here, this kind of skinny one with the 5 windows, is exactly the same as this one. And this one here with the hole in the roof is exactly the same as this one. But in my JSON file, I've actually got that duplicated. So I have copy and pasted here. So I've got house 3 and house 1. And then house 3 and house 1 are used again. And I've literally copy and pasted. So as a general rule, I don't like copy and pasting anything. I always prefer to, abstract things out and have the dry principle, don't repeat yourself. But in this case, I just think it's one of those things where I'm going to leave it in. I don't think it really matters. And I'll probably have the same thing on the other levels. They're only small buildings. But if this was something like if I was defining like a map for a game where there were going to be hundreds of buildings, then I wouldn't want to do that. But because there's literally only like 5 or 6 on any particular screen, I think it's fine. So it's a case of picking my battles. So now that I've got the actual windows in the right place, I can now start putting some faces in there. All right, I've actually done a fair bit of work behind the scenes to actually get some data in there to represent what I want the people to be. But to begin with, before I actually put that in, what I have done now, why is this not loading? There we go. So I've reset the windows back to their default color, but you'll notice every couple of seconds, I am randomly turning on a light. Now it didn't actually check if there's one there already, because all I'm doing at the moment is I'm just setting the color. All I wanted to do is just test the randomness of it, because of course every building is its own object. So this is like the scene class, which is then determine which building, and then saying to the building, okay, go turn one of these lights on. So this isn't how it's going to be in the actual game. It's going to be a bit different to that, but I think I'm now ready to start doing the actual meat of the game now, which is actually populating these houses with kind of people, and then having something for the player to do. So the usage of these little colored boxes, this is just a way for me to kind of test that I've got things working how I want them. So I'm quite pleased with that. I think I'm going to end this video here because it's already getting a bit long, and then I will do another devlog when I'm ready to start actually putting some people in these buildings. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Speak to you next time.